Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Michael, and I'm exploring all the different ways that stationery can bring me joy. I'm very excited to share with you today the completed setup. Well, that might be a little bit of a lie. The 95% completed setup of my Hobonichi Weeks for this upcoming year. As someone who works in a school, I had some time off for Thanksgiving, and I got to use the day after the meal to, get up late, relax around the house. It's actually one of my most favorite days of the year because since we host Thanksgiving, you do the frantic cleanup to make sure everything looks really nice for guests to come over. And so I always joke that it's the cleanest the house will ever be the next day. And the house looks great and everything feels warm and cozy. You have amazing leftovers. And one of the things I got to do was pull out my Hobonichi Weeks for next year and set it up. And so I have my 2025 weeks here as a reference, but drum roll please, boop boo doo doo. The 2026 weeks is here ready to go. And so I thought I would walk us through all of the different sections, what it looks like. I know that I posted a video earlier this year where I kind of, using Post-its, showed what my plan was for each section, but I thought it would be nice to kind of show what those plans turned into once I actually got into the notebook and got started. So this is the 2026. I have it in the antique green, and I've just added some stickers here to the front. I have this little brownstone sticker that I got, I believe, from Kubo and Lucy, which is a shop in Los Angeles, because it looks close-ish to the home that the apartment that we live in. A caution work in progress sticker, because life is a work in progress. And then a little Taylor Swift nod here with the F the patriarchy keychain. It was on the ground. If you know, you know. And since the back of my Hobonichi Weeks is primarily going to be tucked into my Troggin cover, this, will get slid here, and it will live here. I believe that's actually the first time that I've slid this into the cover. Ooh, official. I won't really see the back very often, and so I only put the one sticker there, kind of as a Easter egg for myself, and then when I take it out at the end of the year to archive this week's, it will be there. Just like on the back of my weeks last year, I had this New York pennant and this bird with an umbrella. Although when I first got the weeks, I did think I was going to just carry it in the plastic case, and so I put two stickers back here. So, opening up, I'm keeping it pretty simple in the cover of this week's, on the inside cover, that is. I have a Over the Garden Wall vinyl sticker, and I've put a quote here. I bought this craft Post-it notepad from Daiso this year, and I have used it so much in my daily, use of planning and just having things at my desk. So I thought it was nice to honor that by putting my quote for the year on that craft Post-it. And so I have a quote from Sylvia Plath that says, "Let me live, love, and say it well in good sentences." And I did half of my writing, and then I used my alphabet, stamps to put the live, love, well, and good on there. And the writing was done with my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen. This is in the hard brush tip, and I use that a lot in the setup of this notebook, among other things that I'll highlight. But I wrote that in, stamped it, and then I have stuck this down with glue, but also just added some stickers around it as well. And so that is the inside cover. I did something very similar last year, and I had this Natalie Babbitt quote, but I chose a quote for this year that I am really enjoying. So that is the inside cover. Here on the first page, I have a seal from the Coffee Monster Co. The Coffee Monster Co. is something that will get highlighted a little bit in this setup. As I've mentioned many times, watching Helen, the owner of that shop's TikTok, was the inciting moment that led me down a rabbit hole, but I do enjoy her products, and so I had this belongs to seal. I put my name, and this is a stamp from the Hobonichi Techo company. They had not a stamp rally, but last year in January, they had an event at Goods for the Study, and they had this stamp, and in my weeks last year, I brought it to that event, and I stamped it in the first page. And I also stamped it on some of this craft paper, and so I was really excited that I had this Post-it so I could stick it, because it almost feels like it should be a tradition to have it there. And so that is what I have there on the inside cover. I've done nothing with this spread. I don't really use the, yearly overview for anything really. And so I know some people like to maybe mark off the months as they go. Maybe I'll get into that. Or figure out something exciting to do here. The yearly index, I use this as a page tracker for my reading. And so this year, to cover up kind of like this blank space, I put down some washi. I have at the top the monthly averages, and what I do is I go through, and every day, depending on the number of pages I read, I use a mild liner highlighter. Then there's corresponding colors, so I have this brown for 0 pages, this red for 1 to 25 pages, this yellow for 26 to 50, this green for 51 to 75, this darker gray blue for 76 to 100, and then this lighter blue for 100 plus pages. And so what I'll do is I'll highlight and write the number of pages that I read. Something that I changed for this year, and I mentioned that I wanted to do, is putting a color for 0 pages. Before, I had it 0 to 25, and then it was really hard to distinguish a day where I did no reading. And so this year, I think having this brown is going to make it really easier to see where there are gaps in my reading, and then, the other colors for the actual number of pages that I read. And then I do an average each month of the average number of pages to kind of see which month I read the most. And that is how I have set up this section. I can remove this Post-it. Really quickly, I forgot to mention that how I connect this tipped in piece of paper with my key is by using these campus connectors. I don't know how you would pronounce this. I guess Choi. And so the way that you use these is you open it up and you would take this top area off, and this is what you stick to one part of your tip in. And then once you've stuck both sides, you can then line up where you want it to connect, and then pull the other piece of sticker release paper off and then stick it down. It allows you to line it up really well. And what's lovely is that if you take this on the go, it even has a little pocket. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that really well, where the little bits of sticker release paper that you use, you can slide them in here as trash. This has been really great, and I've really enjoyed using it throughout the year to tip things in. So instead of just using washi paper, this is more of a official way to tip things in. The next section is the monthly pages. And so last year for the monthly pages, I bought the Coffee Monster Co. like monthly kits, and that comes with labels for the day of the week, you know, images, and all kinds of like a banner and dots and things that you can put on the spread. And while I love the products, I didn't like, from the Coffee Monster Co., I didn't like how it bulked up, putting the stickers in the same spot. And so instead of purchasing a kit, I decided to just use washi tape to decorate this. And so I did every month for the year this year. I had this grid washi kit that I purchased, not really a kit, I guess collection. It was one of the first washi collections I purchased. I think it came with like, I don't know, 18 different rolls. And so I decided to kind of give a cohesiveness through the year. I'm going to use a grid washi for each month, and then a matching washi that is more image based. And so I actually picked the images first to match kind of like the vibe of the month, and then picked a grid washi that the color went well with it. And instead of using the Coffee Monster Co.'s Hobonichi Weeks kits, I purchased something she did this year, is she had these large doodle collections for each of the themes for the monthly kits she created. This year, she decided to hand draw and watercolor all of the kits for, you know, the weeks, the cousin, and the A6. And then she has these large doodle sheets of like corresponding images and in the same color scheme. And so I purchased the large doodle sheets for the year and used the stickers that kind of matched the theme best. And so I don't necessarily correspond to the months that she has laid out, the themes. If it matched kind of the washi or the vibe that I was going for, I put those here. And these, I bought them in the washi paper so that they would kind of, you know, match the washi tape aesthetic that I was going for. And so I went through and put all of the birthdays and bigger events for the year on here. And so to mark off birthdays, all I simply do is I put HBD for happy birthday in a blue pen, and I'm using this Stabilo pen in a 0.4 millimeter. And I just write HBD, happy birthday, and then I write in the person's name. And all of the regular writing in my Hobonichi Weeks is using this Energel Klena in the 0.5 millimeter. And this was the collab they did with Sanrio, the Pompompurin branded Energel Klena that I unabashedly love. And so I just went through and wrote all of those in. So you can see for January, my theme is kind of like coffee, breakfast. And then in February, I use this heart cherry washi, and it's kind of like this homey, floral, love kind of theme. In March, I just did this home washi, and so it's kind of like a neighborhood kind of theme. April, I went with the very typical April showers kind of vibe, and so there is this raindrop washi and, you know, rain boot, clouds, that kind of a theme. Then for May, I did a mail theme, so I had this washi that was stamps, and, you know, I did the mail-related stickers. June was a little bit of a funky one. I did these rainbow cats, kind of, I guess, for pride, and so I just kind of found some fun rainbowy stickers to go with it. June was also hard this year because the 1st is on a Monday, and it goes all the way down here to the 30th, so you only really have the bottom area to decorate for June. July, I did this koi washi, and so I did, you know, bubbles, nautical theme. August, I did these flowers, so again, kind of doing a floral theme. September, I have this notebook stationery washi, so kind of book themed. And October, I went with this autumnal fox, and so it's very nature. September, continuing with this nature theme, but now it's more like ivy, mushrooms, that kind of a vibe. And then December, I did this purple mountainscape. And that is the monthly calendars all set up. I do have to go back and just add some of like school breaks that I know up to June, and then, the calendar for next year will be released and I can update those from July to December. And then any trips or things as I start to learn about them will get added in as well. But that is the monthly section. I wanted to show a sample of how I do the weekly section in my weeks. Currently, this is the plan. This will evolve, I'm sure, over the year, just as it did last year, although it evolved drastically last year because it was my first time using a weeks ever. So as you flip through, you can see how my layout changed very dramatically. Currently, how I'm planning on using it is very similar to how I did last year with some slight adjustments. I have my tracker here at the top each day of the week, and then, my medication, reading, did I do some writing, did I get to bed at a certain time, did I do something that brings me joy. This is where I'm adding something by adding this heart to do some tracking for my health. Stuff to do this week is just a running list of to-dos. And then the boxes here that I create are to write just like one highlight from each day, kind of like a snapshot. I always set up the weeks every week using this Delgard pencil. It's from Zebra. It's one of those pencils that when you push the lead out, it twists it so that it constantly is moving. And I really, really enjoy using this pencil. And it doesn't streak or smear, which is also really great. So I will set up this area. And then on the left, this is where important events will go. So I actually didn't fully set this up because I'd be writing Christmas Eve and Christmas here, etc. Any appointments I have, I will put the time slot. Big events will go here at the top, and then I'll kind of calendar out in the time, or chronologic, any events that happen that day. I can put specific to-dos on each of these days, so maybe filtering things from my weekly to-dos into specific days to cross them off, or just new things that pop up. And something new I've added this year is this D section, where I want to plan out the dinners that I'm going to be having every week in here as well. I thought about having its own box for that, but I think for now I'm going to just try and write it at the bottom and see how that works. And how I feel about that. But I've done some minimal, Christmas-themed washi and some stickers. I want to try to be as minimal with the stickers and washi that I use. This one, because it's the first one and it's Christmas, I kind of did all four corners. But the problem I ran into in my weeks last year is that I did very consistent washi across the bottom. And so if you look at my notebook, it's definitely fluffed up. Here's the top. There's definitely some chunk, but then the bottom is way chunkier. And so if you squeeze the notebook, you can see that, she looks like she's wearing a corset. She's cinched for the gods. It's a little thicker here at the top than the washi at the top, very thick from all of the washi at the bottom, and a very thin center. And I kind of want to try to avoid as dramatic of a chunk in that way. And I just, didn't know what I now know, that layering washi over and over again at the bottom is going to create that big layer. And so I have that kind of in mind as I move forward to maybe have some weeks where there is no washi, it's just stickers or some drawing or a minimal one piece of washi, so that, and varying where it is so that I don't chunk this up too much this year. All right, the next thing I want us to take a look at is the notes section. So for the notes section, I have placed this lovely sticker here to kind of just decorate the area. I'm toying with the idea of maybe tearing a piece of paper to just kind of give a title across here that says notes. We'll see if I decide I want to do that. I've used the index to kind of mark out the sections that I'm going to be using in the notes section so far that I know, which are books I've read, movies I've watched, a gift guide by person that I usually buy gifts for, and then a cleaning breakdown for the year. And then I have room left for other sections that I might add, or just general project planning or note taking. I can kind of label out what's going there. Or if I add an official, titled area, I can put that in here as well. And so for books I've read, keeping it really simple, I do have a reading notebook now. And originally when I, set up my Hobonichi Weeks, I did not have a reading notebook. And so I thought that, this was going to be kind of like my reading journal in the back of my weeks before I decided to get an official reading journal. And so I had books read, books I want to read, important quotes, and I was, writing reviews of the books that I read. But as I moved into a reading journal, I realized this is all very repetitive information. And so to keep this kind of as a log for the year, I do want to be able to look back and see what books did I read in this year. Because my reading journal is a Stalogy notebook, that's a 365 notebook, so it's very, very large. It's probably going to encompass many years of my reading. It'd be nice to just look at my weeks as a log of what I read in that calendar year. And so I have enough space using my Canon Ivy to print out book covers that allow me to put 3, 6, 9 covers on one page. And then I can just do a quick star rating under it so I remember how I feel. And so that's why this is very simple. I might go back in. I know some people use a pencil and kind of draw in a template of where the photo will go. I might do that if I find myself having the time to kind of just like zone out and, create a repetitive little block. But for now, I think having it set up like this is helpful enough. I can start using it this way. And so I created a couple of spreads where I'm going to be able to put those 9 books on each page. And then that led me into the same thing with movies that I've watched. I now have a movie, tracker, a notebook where I write about the movie and how I feel about it for each film. And so it kind of is the same thing. In here, I'm just going to print out the movie poster, and I can do 9 on each page. And so just like with books, I want to be able to say in 2026, what movies did I watch? I can put them here. And unfortunately, this film strip washi was actually sent to me because I, for the life of me, could not find film strip washi. I went to all of the stationery stores that I have available to me in New York. I looked online and I couldn't find something that was exactly just this, a simple film strip or some kind of movie washi. And I went on Random Acts of Happy Mail, or maybe it was the stationery Reddit, and I put out like an announcement. Does anybody have movie related washi? And somebody responded and they sent me a sample of this. And it was a lovely sample and I'm so thankful. It just wasn't enough to do all of the pages. So I alternated with this black and white grid, which I think kind of matches the aesthetic still. But it gives me enough pages to do the films that I will watch in 2026. Then this leads me into my gift guide. So I wanted to try this year to have a space to write down any gifts that I find when I'm out and about or whatever, or, just brainstorming, or it comes to mind, oh, this would be a really great gift, or someone mentions something that they want, a place to jot that down. And so because the Weeks is my everyday carry, I thought this would be a great place to kind of have that, so I can really quickly write down my idea or what they mentioned in the space. And so I put down some of the Coffee Monster Co. Washi that I got this year for a birthday celebration. I tore some of that craft paper, used my Tombow, again, brush marker to kind of letter out gift guide. And all I did in here is, use my Tombow to create a rectangle, and then use the fine tip to draw a line to create the section. And then I used my Energel cleaner to write the person's name, and then create sections for these people. And so obviously, I started with my mother and my husband, and then created sections for the other people in my life that I usually collect ideas for gifts. And I left some blank pages in case I wanted to add more people. A lot of my friends do have children, and I love to, at Christmas, get them a book as part of, their Christmas gift from me. And I was wondering about perhaps using this space, but because as they all are different ages and as they are growing, I kind of wanted to keep track of what books I've bought for who, because there are some classic children's books, or middle grade books, or teen books, or YA books that I'm going to want to gift to my friends' kids as they grow, as well as new things that come up. I do want to be able to kind of keep track, so I'm not sending the same book to the same family, because now they have siblings. And so yes, I would love for, to send every child Who Stole My Hat, for example. But if I know that I sent that to the older sibling, that book lives in that house already. So perhaps I should pick a different book so that they have a different thing in their library they can access. And so I was thinking about doing that here as some kind of tracker with title and perhaps children. But then I knew that is a kind of tracker that would have to exist every year as time goes on. And so does it make more sense to do that as a digital tracker so that I just can keep it somewhere and it grows as time goes on? Or even knowing that I'm probably going to stick to Hobonichi Weeks for the foreseeable future, do I use one of these weekly supplemental notebooks to capture that information? So kind of create that space in here, that chart, or however I want to organize it, and then this can just go with my weeks every year moving forward. Not quite sure what my thought is just yet, and so I left these pages blank in case I wanted to use them. I could also, add new people that I might be shopping for, but it's just good to have a little bit of that wiggle room. The next section is I called it So Fresh and So Clean, but it's about just making sure that I'm doing all of the things to keep our apartment kind of kept up with its cleanliness. I've always wanted to have a space where I, as a teacher and now administrator, I love to backwards plan. What's the end in mind, and kind of plan out backwards, to January 1st, what needs to be happening to reach that end goal. And I know that there's no end goal of now the apartment is perfect and it will never, get messy. But thinking about all of the things that need to happen to, keep the house running well and things well maintained. I've seen so many of these things where they have, annual, seasonal, monthly, weekly, daily. And so I sat down and I read a bunch of these articles, from Martha Stewart to Real Simple to Reddit posts, all kinds of things to kind of gather information. And I put down some of the Coffee Monsters Co. Homebody or Cozy Home washi. I put down my title. And then I use this Muji washi tape to kind of create the titles for each section. And now most washi, it's kind of difficult to write on, but I find that the Muji washi tape, if you use the Muji oil-based permanent marker, and I use the fine tip, it actually writes on it pretty well, and it dries really quickly, and it doesn't smudge. And so this is a great tip for labeling, perhaps in spreads for journaling, but also just in general. If you want to organize like some bins in your closet, this is actually a great combo to do that with. And so I wrote annually, seasonal, monthly. I have weekly and daily with some space left to add for those, and maybe one more in the monthly section. But my plan is to think about, as each month turns, to come back here and think about, okay, monthly, what needs to happen and when are those things going to happen? And thinking about seasonally or annually, is this the month where some of that's going to happen? Like every time the quarter turns over, is that when I think about my seasonal to-dos, depending on which quarter it is? And then kind of planning out when these annual things are going to happen. Do they happen all at once? Do I break them up in each quarter so that it's not too crazy? Like perhaps it's like kitchen and then, living room for these things. I don't know exactly, but I'm just excited to have this kind of here. I can refer to it. I think about the weekly, how I can, in each time I set up a weekly spread, can I refer back to this to mark down one of those kinds of tasks going to happen, right? And I have it just here, quick to refer to, and I'm really excited because I've always looked at these lists and I thought, oh, I'll print it off or I'll stick it somewhere, and I never have. But now that I have this notebook that I carry with me, I'm excited to have that information here in one spot. And so that leaves me with just a general notes area beginning on this page 39. And so, if I have project planning that I need to accomplish, or if I have perhaps another spread that I want to add and then add to the index, I have some pages here in the back to do that with. Starting from page 39 to, let's see, where does the notes section end? I believe it's 70 something. Yeah, 75. So from 39 to 75, I have this extra space to add things to. And that brings us to the My 100. And I am using that this year to track my 100 pieces of Happy Mail. And so I put down this, mail-related washi. I titled it off. And so the 100 pieces of Happy Mail that I send or receive are going to be logged here. I already have an inkling of perhaps what number 1 is going to be, so depending on timing. But I'm very excited to log those things in here. Happy Mail does bring me so much joy, and I think it'll be really fun to just be able to look at this list and think about, here are the 100 pieces of Happy Mail I sent or received, and a little note about what that was. And it's kind of just a fun log. I already have received so many postcards and different things from people, and I don't necessarily have a place where I've listed all of those things, and I think it'll be fun to kind of have that listed here in one spot. And that is the official setup of this area. The last thing I have is this Oaklandish sticker. I have a friend, I've mentioned him before. His name is also Michael, and funnily enough, he was born one day before me in the same year, and we even have the same middle name. It's kind of creepy. Last year, when I got my Hobonichi Weeks, I was talking to him about it, and then he purchased a Weeks, and I mailed him some vinyl stickers so that he could stick it into his Weeks. Even though I know he's not going to decorate it, kind of in the same way that I do, he's a very minimalist and just like work efficient kind of person. He showed me that he did stick those stickers in, and he mailed me back some Oakland stickers. And so, sorry, just gathering over here. Last year in the back of my Hobonichi Weeks, I had this Oakland Roots sticker that he sent me. And he had sent me 2 stickers last year, and I saved this one, and now I've stuck the Oaklandish sticker, which is a store in Oakland, again, where he lives. And so I like to think about our Hobonichi Weeks being connected to one another across the country, and so we'll still have that connection this year. Although I think I need to maybe ship him some vinyls for him to include so that we have that connection still established. So that brings us to the official end of how my Hobonichi Weeks has been set up for this year. I would love to know, there are some sections that aren't fully filled out. I already mentioned that this, this year, last year, next year page is kind of blank. Do you do something with this section that might be interesting? I would love to hear about it. I know that I have this December calendar, and then after the full year, I have January, February, and March. I don't use these to plan, and so I know I've been seeing some videos where people use these to track things. I believe it was my Dandelion Diaries. I can put the image of her channel here. Uses these extra months to track things. I don't know if it was in a week specifically, but in maybe other planner that she had. So it's like, covering up the dates and saying like restaurants I visited, and then writing down, 35 restaurants over the year that she really enjoyed. Or ink swatching, I don't know. I think that there's one before the year begins, and then there's these 3 after, and so logically, what would make the most sense? I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Do you just leave them blank? Do you use them for anything? I'm looking for ideas. I think similarly, in the back, there is this favorites area, and I guess I could use it as its intended purpose and just track some favorites that I have in here. Or does anybody use this in a more interesting way? Would love to know. I already used my Y100. There's this new spread this year, which I could just use exactly as they intended to track great food, new friends, fun times, maybe stationery related things. There are like books and stationery here. Does anybody have any other thoughts or ideas? And last but not least is the 365-day checkoff sheet. I tried to do something in my weeks last year where I was like about the books that I was reading, and I did not stick to it. So if there's anything interesting or fascinating that you do with this section, I would love to know. So, sound off in the comments below. What do you use those spaces for? I want to thank you so much for joining me in this walkthrough of my fully set up, although, as I said, 95% set up, because perhaps some of you are going to give me some great ideas to really finish this puppy up. It's been so fun getting to share what my weeks looks like and how I'm going to use it this year. I'd love to know if you use a Hobonichi Weeks also. If you don't, what everyday carry planner you use, whether it is another Hobonichi system or perhaps you use a traveler's notebook diary or Kinbor or any of the other kind of planners that are out there that people use as their EDC. I hope that you have a great end to your day, whether it's another 5 minutes before you put your head down on your pillow or you have the full day ahead of you. I hope it's wonderful. And I hope that you keep exploring all of the possibilities that a blank page can bring you. Until next time, goodbye.